Okay, people. So I am joined by actor, director, producer. Is there anything you don't do, Quinn? The great Quinn Armstrong, people.
So many things I don't do. so many things.
Well, you've got a film trilogy coming, which is a kind of film trilogy. It's interesting. I'm intrigued to see how this all plays out. But the first opening salvo is the Exorcism of Saint Patrick. So, firstly, how are you feeling, man? How are you feeling about this project all about to birth to the world?
I'm always deeply terrified. I came up doing theater, and I was, if you're on stage as an actor, you're doing theater. If something starts to go wrong, you can deal with it. You can, there's something you can do. I cannot tell you how much I hate sitting in a theater watching something I've made. And because it's fine. The movie is fine. I've seen it 100 times. I know what it is, but I'll look and I'll see like, oh, there's that one cut we couldn't get quite right, and I just want to like reach up and just like, um, but aside from that, I have tremendous faith in my collaborators, and they are really the ones who brought this project into the world, and I'm so excited to see for people to see the work of the actors and the crew. It's really something.
So, where did the idea come from? How did this, come to us all?
So this story begins, as all great stories do, with a conversation about tax credits in Ohio.
Oh, that scenario, right?
Yeah, I had talked with Good Deed about doing something for a while, and then we had this idea of like, well, what if we package a few features together into a project? Which made sense for them financially, and I was thinking about that, and I have an enormous backlog of scripts. I write every day. And so I just started picking out ideas and scripts and putting them next to each other and seeing how they would play together. And originally, it was going to be just the Exorcism of Saint Patrick and Wolves Against the World.
Right.
And those are very mirrored movies. They're very, very similar, both in their construction and their subject matter and all that. And about right towards the end of the process, we decided to throw dead teenagers in there just to kind of be chaos, just to sort of change the resonance between all the three of them a little bit.
Okay. And the stories themselves, where did the Exorcism of Saint Patrick come from?
So exorcism comes from when I was younger, I knew a couple people who had been through conversion therapy.
Right.
And I have never stopped being angry about it. I have been angry my entire life when I think about this process, which to me amounts to the torture of children. Uh,
Mm.
and I wanted to create something where there is this supernatural element, this horror element that absolutely pales in comparison to the horror of what one person can do to another. Um, uh, and originally, the plan was I was supposed to play the priest.
Okay.
And then we were having auditions just to cover our bases, and my friend Steve Greist, or Steve Pinder, I believe is his stage name, came in and just blew us all away. Was just incredible, and I think he really is the linchpin, the thing that brings it all together, and makes it special.
Yeah, he does a tremendous job
Yeah.
of like, I'm doing this for you, buddy.
Yeah.
You're just like, jeez.
Yeah.
Oof.
Nothing scarier than a believer.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny. right? The church has done so many crazy things, so many I'm not crazy. Superimpose horrendous
Mm.
things, where if it was a person, they would have been cancelled, boycotted, all manner of things. But for whatever reason, nothing happens.
It's yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think in the United States, the evangelical movement is has shown itself capable in all its forms of horrendous things, just like every church does. But because these are all denominational,
Mm,
what often happens is when something gets exposed, one pastor or one church gets the weight of the attack.
yeah,
Um, and then, like a hydra just pops up somewhere else. There's a guy, I live in Seattle, and there was a guy named Mark Driscoll up here who ran a big church, said horrible things about women and their place in the world and all this stuff, and then was misappropriating funds. The church got shut down and completely dismantled, and now he's out in Arizona doing the same thing. He just
of
moved.
course.
Um, so
Yeah,
it's tough to create accountability.
yeah. It's well, I think it was. I thought it was so glaring during the pandemic
Mm,
because you had, I think, at that time, a priest. It had come out that the Pope had moved this priest so many times, like so
mm,
many times.
yeah.
And then all of these other cases came out, right? Of all of these things that had been going on and sanctioned by the Pope. And you might go, that's the old Pope. But then even the new Pope had said all these crazy things about gay marriage.
Mm,
And then he was just like, let me walk that back.
mhm.
Not got a thing about, I've not got a problem with gay marriage. Just they will never get married in a church.
Yeah.
It was just like, this is so crazy.
Yeah.
But even when it's clear where it's all coming from, still nothing. It is bonkers. It's a bonkers thing.
Yeah, one of my personal sort of drums that I beat a lot is, so there's the idea of the doctrine of vicarious redemption, which says, Jesus died for your sins.
Mm,
Um, there is a lot that is beautiful and wonderful in the Bible. There's a lot of valuable things. The doctrine of vicarious redemption, to me, is an essentially immoral proposition because it says that someone can take moral responsibility for you.
mm,
Which, like, say you and I are driving in a car. You're driving, I'm in the passenger seat, and we hit another car. I can say, hey, you know what? I'll pay for the damage to that car. I will assume the financial responsibility. But if we hit another car and there's like a baby in the back seat and the baby dies, no one can take responsibility for anyone else. And I
no.
think when you act like that's possible, you create really negative things like in the church. If someone does something wrong, they don't have to be responsible for it. Or in
Mm,
the army, if you shoot someone, if you murder someone, then the army is responsible, not you. Corporations and
yeah.
government and all this stuff. I think it is one of the major problems, moral problems in the world right now, is people refusing to hiding their responsibility.
Mm. Yeah. Which makes this film like super dark. Because I think we know these situations. There's been a few films that look at r- um conversion therapy, but
Mhm.
in a different way. So but when we see Patrick, I'll be Pat, you be Trick. Like, when we see all of that, like, you're feeling that situation regardless of if you're gay or straight, whatever. Like, you're feeling for Patrick because this is ridiculous. This is crazy. You know, let someone be who the fuck they're gonna be. It doesn't matter. It's not affecting you or me or anyone. So just let them be. But it's just the, you know, this just horrible like gaslighting that is going on. And then when everything just goes south, it's just a kind of like, eh, these things happen. And so it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
oh, it's tough.
There's a fear of change, and there's no greater example of this in the United States than, gun control and school shootings, which, we see just it is every once in a while I think about it and I feel like I'm going insane because I feel like this is a problem that has a very clear solution, but the levers of power are just jammed. There's just
Mm,
there's no movement on it. Um, and it is it is horrific in the sense of like a horror movie. It is horrific to exist in a place where you feel so out of joint with
mm,
what you see around you.
yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Well, I kind of feel, and with the gun control thing, I do get the argument, but I think the solution and the solution for so many things is education. And when I say education, I mean changing what we do, right? Because how many times have you heard, oh, it's all because of social media?
Mhm,
Like social media is just a tool, right?
mhm,
Social media is like, you know, a knife and fork, right? You can take those and stab someone with them, but that's not what they were made for.
mhm,
So I feel if in school, instead of like religious education, you know what I mean? And some of these other things that are taught, there should be communication, right? And from the minute we go to school, it's something that it's one of those classes that we take through the duration
mhm.
because it's one of those things like behavioral change. It's like, you know, when you go to a tube, subway for you guys, and you're going up the escalators, right? And you see the same poster time and time again. And it's just like, wait, why is there 50 of these posters? Because if you just see it once, it's probably not going to stick in your head. But if you've seen it 50 times, by the time you get to the top, you might not remember all the wording, but you might remember the logo, the branding, the colors, right? And that's the thing. So a communication class should be from infant school all the way until you graduate. And then you like it can deal with like just our interactions with people.
Mhm,
You know what I mean? So we will talk to people better. Like it's male and female, those interactions where people go, oh, well, I thought when she said no, she was really saying, yeah. No, like communication is going to get rid of all of that nonsense,
mhm,
right? It will help us diffuse. You stood on my trainers. What the fuck? Be like, yo, don't worry, man. Like, I get it. Like, handle all of those things, like resolutions to arguments, just all things. And it will also break down those barriers between different races, different, you know, economic classes, different religions, just all of these things. And I think that will solve so many things
mhm.
as well as gun crime because you're not automatically I'm mad, I'm reaching for a gun, you know what I mean? We'll be able to handle. Now obviously we're still going to have issues, but I think that's the key that will break down a lot of things.
Yeah, I think that's accurate, and I think that's a good point. I see, and I'm sure you've seen as well, uh, the rise of anger as the go-to emotion
Yeah.
is it's interesting because I don't think anger is as universally destructive as a lot of people say it is. I think anger can be an important thing. Anger can tell you so that your boundaries have been crossed. It can tell you that you're morally outraged about something. I think The Exorcism of Saint Patrick is an intensely angry movie
Mm,
by design. but I think it is about avenues of force and action where we are so stifled in the actual change that we can create. So many avenues have been cut down for us, and everybody's just like trying to survive in a system they can't control that is grinding them down. That violent anger and trying to harm someone else becomes one of the only ways you can express anger,
Yes.
which is unfortunate.
Yeah, yeah. It's, learning how to channel the anger, so
Yeah.
you're not just striking out. Maybe it's a conversation. Be like, yo, Quinn, I wasn't happy with what you did. We
Mhm.
need to talk about this shit, right? Like, instead of just walking up and be like, pow, there
Mm.
you go, Quinn. Don't like you. You know what I mean? Which is, I
Yeah.
think that's what people want to do now. I think, like, it gets people clicks, notoriety. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all of this kind of nonsense. So, you know, I think when you're creating a film like The Exorcism of Saint Patrick, and you're showing these different outcomes, right? These different realities and these things that happen constantly that we don't always hear about, but they are. I think it makes people stop and think, right? You see a film like this, and maybe like parents are like, you know what? Let's just let Steve be Steve. You know what I mean? Let's let Chloe be Chloe. Let's not do anything. We do not want that to happen. Let's just let them be, right? You
So,
know what I mean? It might
um,
open up that conversation.
yeah, that's part of the hope, and it's also just to take a moment, particularly right at the end of the movie, take a moment for to honor the kids whose lives have been lost and the kids who have been killed in this process. Uh,
Mm,
uh, it is awful that there are too many to name. There are too
yeah,
many to make, every single one of these kids should have the time and effort equivalent to like making a movie put into honoring them. Um, and I think the idea of like making a movie that's going to change things and stuff like that is complicated and is difficult to see play out practically, but I do hope that this can, for the people who see it who do already feel this way, this can strengthen their convictions, and can make, if there are young queer kids watching the movie or listening to this podcast or anything, make them feel that like there are some people who are older who are trying to look out for you. Um, and that's, I know I speak for the entire crew when I talk about that.
yeah. I don't think anyone in their right mind would want to see any of these things happen. And I think it's easy to be like, well, I didn't do the thing, right? They did it to themselves, right? Like they took their life. I didn't do it. But no, you pushed them to that extent, right? You pushed them to that extent, and it's just horrific. So I think, as you said, look, it's not going to rock the world, but I think these things are like pebbles,
Mm.
right? It starts rolling, 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 and picking up momentum, picking up, and eventually it becomes a boulder,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And I think that's the thing. It's just like, someone sees it, has a conversation with someone else, they have a conversation, and it's just that slow trickle, that slow erosion that could lead to, because if a young person sees it and maybe they want to be a politician, maybe they will be in a room where they can be deciding vote on an issue
yeah,
that deals with stuff like this. right? So it's just all of those things. It's giving the film exposure, well, giving people exposure to the topic and the ramifications of. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think, any act of making any movie is a huge leap of faith and often a huge act of hubris. Especially if you're trying to make something that's dealing with a social issue that you care about, you got to kind of throw yourself into it and say, I'm going to do this as an act of honoring people that I care about, as an act of uh, closing a loop for myself on the rage that I have around this. And that kind of has to be enough. And if it goes on to help in any way, that is amazing. But for me, my the there are a number of points made in this movie, but the largest one is that I believe that the people who perform conversion therapy and whose victims then commit suicide are guilty of murder.
Mm.
That is my position, and it's for some people a very extreme position, but I've stated it, and that's my that's where the process kind of ends for me.
Yeah, well, I think, right, we've now had precedent on these things because there was oh gosh, I want to say Boston. I might be wrong, but it was the there was the girl that was dating a boy. uh, y- I think he went to University of Boston, and I think they split up. But she was kept on being like, "Oh, if you should get back together with me," and be like, "You're a piece of shit. I can't believe you've done this." Blah blah blah, and essentially got him to jump off the roof.
Oh yes, I do remember this.
Yeah, and she actually got tried for that. I don't recall what actually. I feel she did get convicted of it.
I think it was a manslaughter conviction.
Yeah, it wasn't a full. Yeah, it wasn't like life in prison or anything like that. But there are repercussions for these things, right?
Yeah.
To say jump, just jump off the fucking building. You're a piece of shit. Just kill yourself. Like, what are you? What's the aim of that? Because you could just say, you're a piece of shit. I don't like you. But no, you're saying kill yourself. So you do want them to do it. Otherwise, you would say some other things. So there should be a repercussion to that action.
Well, this it kind of goes back to what we were talking about anger, and that, there are people who don't have emotional literacy in order to be able to feel like, okay, I feel rejected by this person, I feel angry, I'm going to deal with that. I'm going to deal, like, why do I feel so bad? I'm going to go to therapy or whatever you need to do.
Mm,
And so it becomes about causing pain. The point is to cause pain, and arguably, the point of many actions for the church is to cause pain,
yeah,
uh, where they can get away with it. um, and I think the that comes in many guises. Um, One of the things about Exorcism, and one of the reasons I cast Steve, who is a good friend, a queer man, one of the nicest people you could ever hope to meet in your life, is because he comes off as a nice guy who's
mm,
trying his best. And you can delude yourself into hurting other people with like a tear in your eye because you're just doing what you have to do.
yeah,
Um, Brutal.
yeah. Because there's that bit where he's just like, well, it says it in the book.
Mhm.
So it's true. This is what we have to do because it says it in the book.
Yeah.
And that's what, people have convinced themselves to do a whole heap of just horrendous things.
Most of which are not actually in the book. A
No,
lot Yeah, most of these things are. There's no precedent for conversion therapy in the Bible,
No.
and yet,
But also, it's been rewritten a number of times.
yeah,
Like, we know this, right? We know that, oh God, I think it was Augustus rewrote it, or Octavia. One of the Roman empires rewrote the Bible. So
yeah,
we know that was for a fact that that happened. And you can only imagine it's been rewritten a number of other times, especially with anything that's translated. It's always funny when like you watch the UFC and they're interviewing someone at the end, and they've got the translator, and the guy is like, and then like go to the translator, he's like, he's very happy, and you're like, he said more than that. He said more than that. What's happening here?
yeah. There's. I don't remember the name of the book. There's a fascinating book about the rise of homophobic language in the Bible over its many translations that puts a lot of it in the King James translation, that a lot of what we derive as homophobic text, and there is homophobic text in the, like, there is stuff in
Oh,
the Bible that
yeah,
is
of course.
explicitly homophobic, but the way that that has been sort of sharpened over the centuries into this weapon is not a natural consequence of the text in the Bible. The
Mm.
text in the Bible has a couple passages that are homophobic, but the text in the Bible also says that you should not wear underwear made of two different types of cloth. Like, there, get upset about that. I like, what are we doing? Um, uh, so it's, people choose what they want to emphasize. They choose what they want to be upset about, and then they use the Bible as an excuse. Most often, they shield personal responsibility.
Yeah. And when you look back at those times as well, the Greeks and the Romans,
Oh my God, the gayest people in the world.
you know what I mean? It's just like, so
Yeah,
to believe that, like, this is outrageous. Like, you're just like, what are we talking about? You
yeah,
know what I
it
mean?
is.
Like, I think a big saying, it was like a boy's for fun, a woman's for legacy, or something. There's something like that,
Yeah,
that was said. And it's just like, it's hilarious how then you have this book that supposedly is saying you shouldn't do this and can't be with this person, and everyone's just like, oh, it was said that. It's just like, come on,
yeah.
just let people be.
Well, it's, centuries and centuries of sort of intellectual squabbling and religious squabbling over the text, and it's so complicated and it's so difficult, and I don't fully understand it, to understand how we got to where we are.
Mm.
Understanding of this text, um, and here we are. We're having to deal with things that Saint Paul said. You know, 2,000 years ago. We still have to deal with fucking Saint Paul. This
Mm.
one dude. It is. I don't know. I'd like to believe that we can extract what is valuable and what is wise and what is important in the Bible without just throwing the whole thing out to get rid of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
homophobic,
yeah,
racist, and sexist shit. But man, some days it's hard to keep faith in that.
yeah. It is. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but that's where I feel like a communication um element of school would really help break a lot of these things down.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Mm. Now, the way this film starts is kind of like, whew, yo, you made a tough film, man. You made a film where you're just watching it and you're like, oh my days. Like you're just feeling so much stuff for these people, but everyone does a just incredible job with the acting. But I have to, definitely give a mention to Maya Jam,
Maya Jayam.
yeah, who plays Alana. She is tremendous.
She really, really is. She also plays one of the leads in Dead Teenagers.
Ah,
Um, and we cast her in The Exorcism of Saint Patrick, and then the lead in Dead Teenagers, one of them was unable to come. So about a week before we started shooting, I called Maya. I was like, "Hey, do you want to play a lead in a whole other movie?" Um, she is such a such a fierce collaborator. She really, one of the things that I say to actors is, you know, the cinematographer is the department head of camera and light, and we have these department heads. You're the department head for your character.
yeah.
So advocate for your character, like come to me and fight for what you want.
Mm.
And she is phenomenal about that. She really, really fought for Alana, her character in this. She's and yeah, there's that scene of her. There's a scene of her outside, kind of like digging in the ground
Mm.
for pills, which we were out there. It was like 3 a.m. We were all exhausted. I was like, okay, here we go. Let's do the first take, action. And she started doing it, and everybody woke up. Everybody was like, oh, okay, scary, scary lady.
Oh man, yeah. It's like the way she bookends. It's just it's something. It's
Yeah,
something crazy, man. Something crazy.
she's
Like,
got quite a career ahead of her, I think.
oh, for sure. Like, what was the casting like? Because you talked about, you know, casting Steve,
Mhm.
and then we have Mike, but what about Michael J. Cline, Caitlin McWevy, like Alan Tyson? Like, how did all of like these people come on board?
Yeah. So Steve and Maya were our only two out of town actors. Steve is LA based. I knew him from USC, and Maya came to us from New York. Um, Everybody else is Columbus or Cleveland.
Okay.
Uh, and with both the cast and the crew, I don't live in Ohio. I live in Seattle. I didn't know what to expect. I was blown away by the bench of talent that exists in Ohio. And we were in like deep rural Ohio, Ashland. Like it was not like the big cosmopolitan
Yeah.
city, but
Yeah.
all those actors, with I think one or two exceptions, who were people that the producers knew, came to us from audition postings. They came in, they auditioned. I remember we had a hard time casting Trick at first. We just weren't quite finding the quality we liked. And then Michael Klein came in. And he's got, like, first of all, he just walks in and he's just got this energy where you just want to give him a hug. Like it's just immediately you want to give him a big hug. Um, and he's such a sweet kid. And he is an untrained actor. And Steve is a very like knowledgeable actor with text and stuff like that. And
Mm.
seeing Steve's polish play off of Michael's rawness is, I think, one of the things that makes the movie work. It's a really fun pairing.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, with the casting, was there a particular look, right? Race, gender, all of these things with these roles, or was it just a case of I'm looking for the best person, whoever they may be?
We had some discussions about this because for so both Steve and Michael are white actors. Um, to have a different racial combination for specifically a religious horror movie where one person tortures another person is really complicated. Like there's a lot of complication to it. And we considered, we had a number of people of all races come in. And there were combinations that I was really hesitant about. And partially because I just don't understand.
Mm.
I cannot understand what it might mean. There's a scene where Pat has Trick running laps and is like timing him and doing all this sort of like physical uh, torture, essentially. To have, for example, like a white pastor do that to a black kid, it is difficult for me as a white dude to track what that would mean, and how that would feel for different communities. Um, I think in the end, we just had a conversation where we're like, we're going to go with the combination that we feel has the most spark in the room. Um, but it's something we considered, and it's something that I continue to struggle with in all my projects. About I want to provide opportunities for actors of color. I want to work with actors of color, and I want to write stories that reflect the world I see around me. And most of the time, that's easy. And every once in a while, I come up on something and I'm like, I really don't understand this. I
Mm.
I will try. I'll talk to people. I'll try to figure it out. But it's something I can't grasp intuitively because of
Mm.
who I am.
Yeah. But I think that's a fair thing to say. You know what I mean? Because there's people that sometimes will try and force a situation, and you're just like, I don't know what the fuck I'm seeing because, yeah, yo, we don't do this shit. Like, what is this? And it makes no sense. And you're just like, who did they speak to? You know what I mean? It's super crazy sometimes. So it's just like, yeah, if you don't quite know how to navigate something, I think it's better to kind of be like, yo, I'm gonna move from this than to be like, I know what I'm doing. And, it come off like how many times you watched a film and the female characters all seem like male characters. And you're like, has this screenwriter, has he met a woman? Like, what, what, what is this? You know what I mean? But sometimes it's people that are just like too proud to be like, you know what? I don't know how to write a woman. Let me bring someone in to help me with this shit, or maybe I just don't write about women, you know?
Well, I think because the danger of something like this is you don't want to feel like, oh, I can't write black characters. I'm only going to write white characters and only work with white actors. That's dumb.
Mm.
Um, I
No,
think
but you bring in people to help you, right? You talk
exactly.
to people to be like, okay, I want to write this scene, but I'm struggling on the nuance. Can you help me? Can you break this thing down for me? And like the more you do that, the more it becomes intrinsic to you, and you be like, okay, I think I can do this,
Yeah.
on my own now. Or you know what I mean? I can take the stabilizers off, as it were. You know what I mean?
Well, and this is essentially what I ran into when I was talking to friends of mine who are people of color, and also talking to people in the religious community. Um, when we were talking about Exorcism of Saint Patrick, I remember I was talking to a friend of mine who is a Baptist pastor, like a deep South, at a black church, and he was like, we don't really do this. Like there's
Mm,
like, if you want to like have this kid be black or have the pastor be black, you can, I guess, but it's going to be like you just took a white character and just didn't change anything and just cast a black actor for it. Um, so that was when I talked to enough people and that was what I was hearing. That was a moment where I was like, okay, yeah, this is probably not a direction for who I am as a director to pursue.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, that's super interesting. Like, it's one of the fun things I like about these kind of conversations because you find out about the different approaches,
Mm.
right? Because I think sometimes people watch a film and be like, oh, yeah, they just made a phone call and got these people to come and be in it. And, you know what I mean? They don't get what the process is, what the conversations are about, can that person do you think they would work with that person? And because
Yeah.
sometimes you always hear like you have some great people come in for a role but the chemistry just isn't there, so it doesn't make sense, right? So you go with some people that maybe you haven't even heard of, but
Mm.
they kill it and create this dynamite dynamic, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's always fun hearing about these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like what were the I guess biggest barriers for you with making this?
The biggest barrier on Exorcism was time. We shot we shot that movie in about 12 days.
Yo.
It
Okay.
was it was a mad sprint. And kudos to again the cast and crew that we made it at all. Um, but that also kind of in a way I think helped because everybody knew we didn't have a lot of takes. We didn't have a lot of time, and everybody knew that we were making a movie about these two people and their dynamic between each other, and the supernatural stuff and all the effect stuff is only to help that. So
Mm,
everybody was really there for Michael and Steve. We were just making space for them to do their work. And I'm so proud of the cast and crew for being able to do that because it's hard to step back sometimes and let someone else take center stage.
mm.
But yeah.
Yeah, and I can imagine if Michael coming in with not as much experience as anyone else. Like, there's times when people might feel a bit like, I mean, I've got years. I've got years. I've worked with these people and done this, and but I should have a bigger part. You know what I mean? So yeah, no, that's a great thing.
Yeah, it is. That's the LA disease is I've worked with and the budget on my last movie and all this stuff. And that's one of the reasons I left LA is because I started caring about that stuff. I was
Mm,
there for 5 years, and after a little while, I was like, sorry, I was feeling really bad because I was like, "Oh, I've got this feature coming up, but it's not big enough. It doesn't have enough stars." And then a friend of mine sat me down and was like, "Since when do you care?" I thought, "Oh, yeah, okay. This city is getting to me." But, uh, not to say that there aren't amazing down to earth people in LA. There are many, but, we had a very selfless crew on this. They were
mm. No, that's great, man. That's great. And was it the same crew, like back behind the camera crew that went on to Wolves and Teenagers?
yeah, same. We had some people come and go that were like day players, PAs and things like that, but same core crew except uh, Exorcism had a different sound person. Um, uh, in again, all of us in a dorm, in these little dorm rooms in rural Ohio, pretty far away from our friends and family. The fact that everybody kept it together, we had so little conflict. We had so little stress. Everybody, it was just a dream working with them.
Oh, tremendous, man. That is
Yeah.
no, that's great. I mean, Quinn, I've been trying to keep track of the time because I know you have something else shortly. And so, yeah, unfortunately, man, we're out of time, which
Ah,
is just so frustrating. Um, so before I let you go, let people know how they can keep track of everything you're doing, follow you, all of that jazz.
Yeah, this is it's I'm not on social media like at all.
Wait,
I don't
come
really have
on.
one, but you can check out Good Deed Entertainment and Cranked Up Films. They're the ones releasing these guys. We're going to be in Ohio doing a bunch of screenings, and then we're going to widen out. And I believe they're going to be on streaming um, uh, pretty soon. So follow
Yeah,
or check out Cranked Up and Good Deed to get
yeah.
the info.
Now, the Exorcism of Saint Patrick will be hitting on the 27th of August, people. So mark that date down in the calendar. And I think you're doing a Fear Street situation. So then each week a new one will drop, which is super interesting. But yeah, no, this has been great. Thank you, Quinn. Really appreciate the time.
Kevin.
Super interesting conversation. And let's try and do it again for at least one of the other films.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love that.
Awesome. Well,
Okay.
Quinn, all the best. I hope, I hope you have a great launch on the 27th. You won't see it because you're not on social media, but I'm sure people will be phoning you up and being like, yo, incredible film, my friend. So, yeah,
Awesome.
all the best, man. All the
Thank
best.
you so much. Hope you have a good one.
Take care, man. Bye.
Bye.